If you have a truck gun, you probably should have a helicopter gun too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Or even like a 10 mil, like you talked about, like having a 10 mil in a fanny pack, right, would be beneficial because there's brown bears that would kill you. Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm with Andy Stumpf, and we're out here.
Get together, be professional.
I know, sorry.
Zip it.
Philcraft Outpost. We are
at an outpost.
We're at an outpost. Your cool hangar with your very expensive helicopter. That looks very cool. I thought this was an R-44 kit copter. It's not that. What is this?
This is an MBB BO-105P model.
That's a lot of nomenclature. What do they typically, like what is the, you said Red Bull, right? They do the...
They have the civilian version, same basic airframe. They have different blades on theirs. They have acrobatic blades on theirs. These are lifting blades. The difference is theirs are civilian certified. This one actually came directly from the German military. This was an anti-tank helicopter.
Whoa, okay. So they were used for like, as a military platform in Germany, decommissioned and then purchased, I assume, and just brought over here to...
I am not sure on the mechanism by which they were brought over or whether or not they were decommissioned. They were essentially purchased, though, by an individual and brought to the U.S. It's my understanding about 50 of them were brought over.
So if you say anti-tank, so it used to have like full capability.
Rocket pods, sensors, the whole nine. That got, it got demilitarized. I don't know if it would necessarily get decommissioned, but yeah, it flew with the German military.
What would you use this for as in a civilian capacity? Is it like a CSAR platform? Is it like a transport? Like what's the actual application now?
So there are still some countries that use it as a EMS platform. You can take the rear seats out. You can fit 2 stretchers side by side in the rear compartment. It's massive. So some countries are using them as that EMS life flight type bird. Other countries are using them still for military helicopters. Some use them for search and rescue. I guess you could outfit it with a hoist and do all of those things. But for a civilian owner, so this is an experimental category helicopter, not meaning it's put together in a garage or something like that. But when they were purchased and brought over, that was the FAA certification category that was probably the easiest for them to acquire the most rapidly. And so it has some limitations. You can't do anything for hire. So I can't charge for my services, nor would I ever want to do that, but I can volunteer and provide flight time for agencies or entities or individuals if I choose to do so.
When you look at this helicopter, you talked about the considerations of being in Montana, and you fly this year round. There is a chance or potential of you having to be in an emergency situation where survival gear, first aid gear would be applicable here. Do you have a current setup that you utilize for this aircraft?
For survivability, I mean, so there's 2 things. Let's say there was a legitimate aircraft malfunction. A lot of helicopter instruction when you're getting your license is auto rotations, but that's when you are in the R-44, where you have a single engine. And if the engine were to fail, how do you safely or attempt to safely get the aircraft onto the ground? And that's why there's that emphasis on auto rotations. So when I got my type rating in this, we did auto rotations as well, but this is a twin turbine. So if I lose one of the turbine engines, I can actually still maintain flight. And I can gain altitude if need be. I'm going to need to do a run on landing. I'm not going to be able to just hover and bring it in. So it allows me to get to an airport, hopefully. There would be instances, depending on the malfunction, to fire in the engine, something like that, like we're getting the thing on the ground for sure. But it is possible you could lose both. That would probably be a fuel contamination issue. I can't think of any other real reason why you would lose 2 turbine engines. They're very reliable. But in the aircraft emergency, A, you have to survive that. So your piloting skills are going to allow you to survive that. But then B is, where are you at on the ground and where did this happen? So let's assume you're flying, whatever, out east. What you can barely see over the top of those hangars, that's the western edge of the Bob Marshall National Wilderness. And then farther up, which is actually obscured by the hangar, is the entrance to Glacier National Park. They're separated by a road, an east-west running road. You can fly over that stuff. You can't land in the Bob Marshall National Forest and stuff like that. You can't land in Glacier Park, but you can fly over there, and I do all the time. And let's say that happens there, and you like, okay, cool, I got to auto-rotate this thing in. You get it there. Yes. Let's say it's the wintertime. You're like, I lived. Oh. How do I live now for the next 12 hours, the next 14 hours, the next 16 hours? So the one thing that I don't have really dialed in is we'll call it the readiness survivability modular kit. The 2 things that I have with me all the time are a very basic, I'm not gonna call it a mechanics kit because I'm not a mechanic. I mean, this is simple stuff. This is stuff to clean windshields with, an extra battery pack, Allen set. This is a fix-it like toolkit, O-rings and things like that in case you spring a leak of some kind. This is for pre and post flight, just looking at any potential fluids or picking fluids up. I have the ability to add oil, some ability to clamp stuff down. I have a socket tool set here, very, very basic. And oftentimes I'll usually have a quart of hydraulic fluid and a quart of oil. One of the cool things about the design of this helicopter, the rotor head, what you see, that's a single piece of titanium.
That's a one piece of titanium right there?
That's what makes it acrobatic, the ability to be acrobatic. It's liquid filled, it's filled with oil. But that's the same oil as the engine oil, which is what you're seeing right there, which is the same oil as the transmission fluid oil, which is the same oil as the tail. Well, it's just smart. That way you don't have to have 5 different quarts. If I take a quart of oil and I have a leak anywhere in the system, I can probably nurse it back to where we need to get, and I don't have to have 5 different types. In addition to that, you can have some hydraulic fluid in there. Actually, it's pointless to have hydraulic fluid with me because I need a particular high pressure connector to be able to put it into the system, but it has dual hydraulic systems, so you can maintain flight. If you were to lose one, you're gonna want to get it on the ground.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's like very basic medical stuff, but like this is everything from like aspirin to fill in the blank, right?
Like medic.
Yeah. Super skin burn stuff, space blankets, light, washable stuff, fracture kit. So again, it's not crazy and it doesn't solve everything. Like one of the things you can notice, you had the bleeding control kit out. Hemorrhaging type stuff, it's a little bit light on that. So it's a good start, but it's not the complete thing.
Yeah.
And so again, this is, mandatory, right? The ability to tweak on little things. To me, this is mandatory as well too, because again, there's this in-air survivability in the crisis, and then there's if you make it to the ground. And that big piece that I'm missing, and so most of the time I only have 4 people in here, and you can use the back for luggage and stuff like that. But what I'd love to do is develop a modular system that sits in this seat. Most of the time I'll have the mechanically oriented bag sitting right here with the medical bag right here, but you could easily hang something off of the back or make something that's a longer panel or just utilize the seat in the back for that.
Not the back of the seat though, you don't think?
We could do that as well too. And I mean, again, I'm looking at, if you have a truck gun, you probably should have a helicopter gun too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Or even like a 10 mil, like you talked about, like having a 10 mil in a fanny pack, right, would be beneficial because there's brown bears that will kill you.
And I usually have my fanny pack with my pistol in it, and I'll just throw it on top in the back seat as well there though too. I seatbelt the stuff in there just in case you do have an emergency, you don't want stuff flying around.
And you're thinking survival, like a grab and go kit if you survive the crash, and now it's a wilderness survival problem.
Yeah, I mean, you have the aviation is going to sort itself. That's going to come down to your stick and rudder skills and your ability to get the aircraft on the ground, regardless of what's happening. But then you have to survive everything else beyond that. And so that's where, honestly, the deficiency probably is. And it would change over I would say the spring and summer months are going to be one type of kit. Fall and winter months are going to be a very different type of kit.
Yeah, we're talking extremes.
We're talking very extremes. Like today, it's probably 80 degrees out right now. Fire starting. I'm not worried about getting hypothermia in the backcountry. And oftentimes when people do call and they're lost, depending on the visibility conditions, even the 2-bear guys, they'll look at the risk versus reward. Like, are they going to hype out tonight? No. We'll come get you in the morning when we have better visibility and we're not trying to do a landing on nods in the backcountry.
Oh, they do that. So they'll tell them like, hey.
Especially, if you fire off an SOS or a text, if they can come get you and it is a low enough risk threshold, they're always going to push it. But if you can just wait 8 hours and you're able to locate them and you can walk somebody in from a trailhead versus having a multi-million-dollar asset overhead, they take all of that into account.
Got it.
And I think you need to. It's important that they do that.
Let's talk about priorities of work as it relates to kind of the things that you're talking about survival-wise.
Yep.
We were talking about doing a winter survival class, which we're going to do that. We're working with a guy named Nick, potentially using his facility, even potentially landing the helicopter there and teaching a class for aviators, but also backcountry guides and people who like to frequent the backcountry, because the winter here will kill you. I mean, the backcountry here kills a lot of people, but for sure the winter will kill you. What would be some priorities that you would think you would have to have in your survival bag in this kind of scenario where you do survive to the ground?
Talking about in the winter months?
In the winter months.
I think your biggest thing is going to be your ability to not succumb to the elements. So you're going to need the ability to layer. I think you'd have to have a full layering system for yourself and the ability to start a fire. I'd be worried far less about water because it's going to be snow-covered ground. So you're going to be able to source that if you can get a fire going. But finding usable fuel sources in those environments, right? I mean, it might be a wetter season where a lot of the snow, as opposed to soaking the moisture out of things, it's dumping the moisture into it. So I think you'd have to have a very robust fire starting ability, I don't necessarily know if you would need to bring fuel with you, but you need the ability to gather fuel. You'd need a saw of some kind, not necessarily like a pole start saw, but like, a mechanical sort of saw. You would need an axe, the ability, like one of those massive ferro rods, maybe even a fuel source to get that started. And if you could do that, I think you'd be largely survivable.
I didn't think about that, but that's a good point. Like when you land and you're in the snowpack, that's a huge different consideration than landing in a field of grass, especially for starting a fire. So maybe a tender bundle of at least the things to initiate the fire, and you could dump more fuel source, twigs, branches with a saw on top
twigs,
of
branches, and honestly, you could, like, there's drain ports. You could pull Jet A out of this as well too, and use the fuel from the aircraft if you needed to.
Yeah.
Be cautious doing so, anybody who wants to do that. But I'm just saying it's surviving the actual in-air emergency would only be the beginning. It would be everything after that, depending on what type of rescue and what assets are available, that would determine whether or not you're going to survive that.
What do you use for communications just actively in this? Are you on your cell phone? Do you have reception here, or are you using inReach? Like, what do you...
So I have one of the, what are they called? The Starbats?
Yeah, the Starbat.
So I have one of those that easily goes underneath the seat. I have AT&T, which allows me to satellite text if need be. I also have Garmin inReaches that I can throw into the bag very easily as well. And then I'm in UHF or VHF radio comms from on the ground all the way up until altitude. As long as I don't dip over a mountain range, I should be able to reach out to a higher level of help or notification and at least pass a message on the way down, hopefully.
When you think about medical emergencies, like you mentioned, stop the bleed. This is a lot of Band-Aids, bacitration, but Mylar space blankets I saw in there.
It's a generalized kit. This is not a trauma bag.
So what you're thinking is like, this is the core of what you need, and then you add all the things based on the season, based on even what you're potentially doing?
Yeah, I would layer probably 2 to 3 tourniquets on top of that, and probably 2 to 3 stop the bleed kits on top of that, and then I think you'd be well-rounded across.
One for each passenger or whatever?
Yeah, or just, it's always, one is none and two is one. I'd rather have extras.
Yeah, something I thought about too, and I'm wondering what your experience in aviation and the injuries that you've potentially seen, even in the case study. Would SAM splints, things to immobilize extremities around the neck? I feel like I've at least seen the movies and heard of people who have crashed. They have back injuries, neck injuries.
Depends on the mechanism of how you crash. I mean, would it be helpful? Probably. Would it hurt you at all to have that stuff in there, even if you weren't able to use it? It's not going to impact your weight and balance, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Better to have and not need than need and not have.
Yeah, good point. Okay, let's talk about the actual physical loadout, because I see this bag and I go, oh man, that may be cumbersome, but this is a toolkit.
It's a toolkit. It's
you're working out of a toolkit.
And that is something that can go, that doesn't have to necessarily be on the seat.
Yeah.
I just put it there because it's convenient to do so, to pull it in and out.
Yeah, and this is a range bag, so you just have ready access.
Yeah. And then honestly, it can go underneath the seat as well too.
Do you think there would be a benefit, and this is also open as a question to people in the comments who are stall pilots, Rotary-Wing, fixed wing. If you're flying and you do crash in the backcountry, we all seen the movie Alive and the things that they had to deal with, one of which they had to kind of put together rudimentary ways to transport their logistical supply train to sustain their survivability, making the long trek down to the village to be able to get help. And they used very strong, basically hikers who could do it. Would it be advantageous to put some of this, including the survival stuff, into something load bearing? Like you want ready access, so you grab the thing and then you have straps to load bear it? Or do you think just going to be around this helicopter is good enough?
I don't think there's any downside to having it in a load bearing system, especially if you're not going to add a bunch of size to it from an external frame. If you could make it a backpack, essentially.
Backpack, yeah.
I think that there's no downside to that and all upside. Because whatever, let's say you need to auto-rotate in, it's an incredibly wooded area where another aircraft's not going to be able to land. They may not even be able to hoist, depending on what it is. You are going to need to be mobile, and having to carry that via the strap right there, not optimal. You could do it, but who knows what else you may have with you in that scenario.
Yeah.
So being able to throw something on your back, I think, would be optimal.
Yeah, because this even has the ability with this to molly attach to a backpack.
You could molly it to something else,
Yeah. You could probably even get the straps attached to this in some way. And this is a My Medic kit.
Yeah.
I just did a review on this, a really robust kit that has everything in it.
Not a trauma bag, though. That's
not a trauma bag,
It's a general
first aid bag.
First aid, which you're probably going to need more than a trauma bag, but the combination of two, you're bulletproof.
So you land in the middle of nowhere. You likely know the general vicinity of where you're at. Is in this environment humping out even a consideration, or is it immediately, because of the CSAR assets, the 2-bear assets they have, to contact SOS and have them come to you?
I would get it on the ground as safely as possible. And from there, I would take a look at it. If it was walkable, I would still notify my local law enforcement buddies who have connections with Tube Air, just so somebody knew where I was. And then personally, I wouldn't want to pull that if it's not a risk to life, limb, or eyesight, and I am mobile and it's just inconvenient, I would rather not pull that asset away from their alert status or their ready status for that. So I probably would just walk it out.
Walk it out, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're healthy. It's
situation dependent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would use it if needed and not if not needed.
Something I thought about, especially with dealing with casualties, because often you'll see like these fixed wing crashes. It just happened recently. One was in the harbor in New York where they had a hard landing. But it happens all the time where several people will be catastrophically injured and several people are completely fine. Have you ever thought about a pole-less litter or a way to transport the person who's a casualty? Or is that like, that's not gonna happen? You're not gonna get in the backcountry here and then drag a casualty in a pole-less litter across terrain? Or do you just like, hey, we got a casualty, we isolate them, we package them, and then we wait for help?
I mean, I don't think you ever really know what's gonna happen. I haven't thought about that until you just said that. But again, that's something that could go under that seat and would never, you could zip tie that thing to the underside of the seat. You would never know that it's there. It wouldn't get in the way of the potential to store things under there. Again, I view this through, is there an upside to having this? Tremendous. Is there a downside to not having it? Potentially. You have weight limitations and cubic limitations. That is going to impact neither of those.
Let me know what you guys think about in the comments, because I think a lot of times we don't think about the transport of the casualty to the higher level of care, or in this situation, in the backcountry in a survival scenario, like buddy carrying a human being for a long way. That briefs well in a class where you're isolated, it does not execute well. It's actually a disaster trying to do that. And especially you take a guy like me and Andy are 200 plus pounds, nearly impossible to do. Last question, you're a fixed wing pilot. You've flown a lot of platforms and now you're Rotary-Wing. What are common mistakes that pilots make? Because I know you study crashes. What are common mistakes that you see pilots make that maybe don't have a background in how we think, and they continue to do it until they make the fatal mistake that ends their life?
I would say complacency or not having thought through the potential contingencies. So right outside of the Glacier National Park property is a small grass field called Ryan Field. There were 2 fatal aircraft accidents there last year.
Wow.
Both with very experienced pilots, and unfortunately both with passengers. And they both did the same thing. They went off the end of the runway and crashed into the trees in an attempt to take off. And I'm not here to Monday morning quarterback anybody, but I do study this stuff. Both of the days were very hot and we're at a relatively high altitude, which is very dangerous. There's an altimeter in the aircraft. That tells you how high you are off the ground. Density altitude is the altitude at which your engine thinks it's trying to perform at. And those can be separated by thousands of feet. The hotter it gets, the less dense the air molecules spread out more. The propellers that are trying to create lift, whether it via, these are basically airplane wings that are oriented in this direction versus a propeller that's oriented vertically. Performance degrades rapidly in hot and high environments. And not having even as simple as a go, no-go point on the runway where at this airspeed I will be at this place or greater, or I'm going to abort the takeoff. Not thinking through those things ends up costing people their lives. I'm not that it's never an aircraft failure, but if you are a student of these pilot debriefs, more often than not, it is a pilot that takes a perfectly functioning aircraft and augers it into the ground due to poor decision-making, lack of currency, lack of competency, encountering a weather pattern that they weren't prepared for or they didn't look to see that it was coming, and then they get over their head over their skill ability. It's not that it can't be the aircraft, that does happen. But the vast majority of the time, it is people taking functioning aircraft and killing themselves with them.
And that happened here
Twice.
Yep. Wow.
Last year.
Wow.
Yep.
Guys, we just did a podcast on the Cleared Hot podcast. It's going to be linked down below. We talk about some of these things, and this winter survival course we'll have more to follow on Fieldcraft Outpost. We'll keep you abreast of all that. Is this, this is what you learned Rotary-Wing flight on, or did you have to go through a trainer
I learned on an R-44 mostly.
Yeah.
And then when I got into this, I went through the full type rating course, ground school, multiple days, multiple hours of emergency procedures, normal phases of flight, takeoff, landing, auto rotations, losing an engine at a low hover, losing engines at a medium hover, going up to 150 feet, snapping back one of the engines and having to dive at the ground to get airspeed to be able to fly out of it. It was a pretty intense course. They go through all the systems, the pneumatic, the hydraulic, electrical, engine, blades, all of that stuff.
Transitioning out of this is pretty high performance compared obviously to an R44, right? This is
in some ways, yeah. In some ways, yeah.
Is somebody who's like motivated or interested in aviation, since this can't be used for work and it's used more for I mean, this is a personal aircraft. What would be the step up from this that you'd be interested in doing? Is it that little bird?
Maybe. I mean, the little birds would be cool. They are comfortable for the pilot. They get really tight in the back. They're not great for having
real tiny.
So the question is, what would you use it for? If this is for me to express my love of aviation and explore Montana, there may not be a better tool than this one right here.
Okay.
But you'd be into the Bell 206, the traditional news chopper looking thing, a Bell 505.
Millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But it's in the turbine range. There's a large jump in performance between piston engine and turbine engine. And in my personal opinion, I would say reliability as well too. One is kind of spinning all in the direction, whereas with pistons, they're just trying to beat each other apart at all times.
Yeah.
Both still have mechanical issues. As far as somebody in aviation, especially if they want to make a career out of it, all flight time is valuable, but the turbine flight time is going to be the most valuable. So you would want to get into a turbine aircraft and get turbine hours as quickly as possible, but also be realistic about how long that's going to take. I mean, I'm not a good example. I did my first flight in a Gulfstream when I had less than 500 hours. But I'm not a good example of that. Most people at the type rating course I was there had somewhere between 6,000 to 8,000 hours already. But I have probably an equal split now between turbine time and piston time. So a couple of thousand hours of both. It just be realistic and reasonable how long that's going to take. It's not overnight. It's a long path. It's a long journey. You want it to be, because a lot of this stuff is complex. And you don't want to have a surface level of understanding. This is my opinion, and opinions vary wildly. But I don't want to have a surface level understanding of what's going on in here. I want to have a very deep understanding. So if I do have an issue, I also understand what that may cascade into, what other systems it may impact, what are my limitations, what are my go, no-go, all of those things associated with that as well.
Last question, what do you enjoy more, flying fixed wing or rotary wing now that you're into it?
They're both awesome, but they're very different. You're lower altitude and generally slower in rotary, but you can also land places. My fixed wing experience, I would equate it to just be very linear. It's a lot of 90-degree turns, and even flying into major airports like LA, JFK, and Boston. I've flown into all of them in jets. It's very systematic. Helicopter, you just pick up and go. And
I see a space, I want to go to that place.
And
you go.
Look at that cool little mountain peak. Well, I'm not going to land the jet there, but and you can land it right there. You could, land on the bank and go fly fishing. You could, if you have a big enough private property, all you need is landowner permission to land a helicopter. You can land right there in your front yard if you want to, or somebody else's front yard if you want to. So they're both awesome, but they're very different. So I wouldn't say I enjoy necessarily one more than the other. If you're going to travel long distances, yeah, you want to be in fixed wing in a jet. But if you're localized and you want to explore where you live, Rotary-Wing's a pretty cool way to do it.
Super cool, looks cool. If you're an aviator or survival kind of person who has some good feedback on what you think should be in the Fieldcraft Outpost, powered by Long Haul Supply Company kit, let us know in the feedback down below, because I'm going to build our aviation first aid kits. Backcountry first aid kits is essentially what it is, with slight modifications for aviation. It might be a bag consideration versus the contents of that bag. We're going to include it, and we're going to take your feedback and apply it. I've done first aid kits for a decade. It's not hard to do. Taking all the pieces and putting them in a functional bag that works for your specific setup, a little bit more difficult to do, but we'll get it done with your help and your feedback. Thanks to Andy Stumpf. Make sure you tune into the Cleared Hot podcast. And our episode is linked down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Andy.
Sweet, man.